and play on 2nd and 10. That's his youth right there.
Tagovailoa trying to make up for it. Fires to the end zone. Touchdown! Alabama wins!
So today I'll be reacting to week 1 of the 2025 college football season. So it was a very interesting first week of college football. So Nebraska did something last Thursday that they've not been able to do much in the last several years, which is win a close game, beating Cincinnati 20-17. I watched every snap of that game, and Nebraska's offense looked weird because Dylan Raiola looked good. He made a lot of great throws, and he threw for 242 and 2 touchdowns, and completed a really good 78.6% of his passes. And their wide receivers, I thought, looked pretty good, and their starting running back Emmett Johnson looked good. He ran for 108 yards, and their offensive line, I thought was going to be good this year, and it looked good in this game. And with it being so experienced, I think Nebraska will be able to lean on their offensive line a lot this year. But then you look at the score, and Nebraska only had 20 points, which is bad, especially going against what's probably not a very good Cincinnati team. They moved the ball well, but they had a lot of trouble finishing drives. And defensively, Nebraska's secondary, I thought would be really good, and it sure looked good in this game. They held Cincinnati to just 69 yards passing, and you really can't do much better than that. But I thought their defensive line was going to be an issue this year, and it sure seems to be. Cincinnati ran for over 180 yards in this game, and their quarterback Sorsby ran for 96 yards. And that's really going to be an issue for Nebraska this season in the Big Ten, which is a conference that loves to run the football. And I don't see Nebraska as a contender to win the Big Ten this year, not even close to that, because Penn State, who they play late in the season, I think is going to destroy them with their run game. So I watched part of the Georgia Tech Colorado game, and Colorado must really be a terrible team because Georgia Tech turned the ball over 3 times in this game, and they were all on their first 3 possessions, and Colorado still lost the game. Colorado's defensive line, like I thought, is horrible. Georgia Tech ran for 320 yards in this game, and 156 of those yards was their quarterback Haynes King, and he scored all 3 of their touchdowns with runs. And Colorado's defense overall is probably okay. They kept Georgia Tech down to 27 points, which is not great at all, but it's okay. They probably have a pretty good secondary. They did hold Georgia Tech to just 143 yards passing, but Colorado's offense is already missing Shador Sanders and Travis Hunter really badly. Their offense looked terrible in that game. And Deion Sanders, he kept showing him on the sideline, and he looked confused and miserable, probably because Shador and Shiloh Sanders are no longer there anymore, which is the only reason why he was there to begin with. And Shador and Shiloh Sanders, it looks like neither one of them is going to have an NFL career because Shador Sanders went fifth round, and Shiloh Sanders just got himself kicked off the team, and then Deion Sanders is not a coach at all. His assistants do all of the coaching. He's just there watching the game. The best Colorado can hope for is to get to 6 wins, I think, to get to a bowl game. And Deion Sanders might not even be around for that bowl game because he'll probably want to get out of there as quickly as possible. And I watched most of the Auburn Baylor game. Auburn's offense for sure seems to be a lot better than it was last year. Scoring 31 offensive points was even though they scored 38 points. One of those touchdowns was a kick return touchdown. And I thought Auburn was going to have a really good offensive line this year, and their offensive line sure looked good in that game. Now I know Baylor probably doesn't have a very good defensive line, but still, Auburn ran for 308 yards in that game, and Jackson Arnold had 137 yards rushing and 2 rushing touchdowns. Now he still did have trouble passing, only throwing for a little over 100 yards. And he did kind of seem similar to the quarterback that he was at Oklahoma, but he does seem to be able to run the Hugh Freeze offense a lot better than he was able to run the offense at Oklahoma last year. And Auburn's defense, I thought, played well, holding Baylor to 24 points. Who is at least on paper got a good offense. It was kind of strange though because Auburn's secondary did really struggle. They gave up over 400 yards passing, and that was the part of their defense that has so much experience back. And their front seven played really well, which doesn't have much experience back. But Auburn now, I think, is probably a good team, but I would have to see more before I can say they're a real contender to win the SEC. And Ohio State got a really impressive win over Texas. Their defense couldn't have looked much better, holding Texas to 7 points. It only could have looked better if they would have got the shutout. Looks like Ohio State's defense might be even better than last year, which means it probably is the best defense in the country again. And if it is, they've got as good a chance as anybody of winning the national championship.
They need 10 here. Manning stepping up, and he's taken down behind the line of scrimmage.
But Texas's defense looked almost as good, holding them to just 14 points. Texas's defense is for sure a top five defense. Again, and Texas, I still think is a really good team, one of the best in the country, and a contender to win the national championship this year. So I didn't think either quarterback played very well in this game. Julian Sayin, I thought, managed the game a little bit better than Arch Manning did. Arch Manning was awful in the first half, and he did play better in the second half, but overall, it's still only 167 yards passing. And Sayin's overall numbers, though, weren't very good either. Neither quarterback to me seemed fully ready for a game like this, which is understandable because it's the first game of the season and they're both new starting quarterbacks. But even though Texas didn't shut down Jeremiah Smith like they did in the playoff game last year, they were still able to stop him from making any big catches. And a very big surprise was that Kansas State had to score a last minute touchdown to avoid getting upset by an FCS team, and they still only won by 3 points, 38 to 35. And it's so surprising because Kansas State played Iowa State in week 0, and even though they didn't win, they looked decent. They look like they would probably be the normal Kansas State team now, which is 9 wins, which makes me think that this game against the FCS team was a fluke because Iowa State also played an FCS team this week and they won very easily. And Kalen DeBoer has really accomplished a lot in his time at Alabama, even though he's not been there very long. And they're all bad accomplishments, though. He's gotten them their worst season in 17 years, and he's now in only 14 games as their head coach. Lost to 4 unranked teams, which Nick Saban only lost to 4 unranked teams in his 17 years as Alabama's head coach, and he got them their first ever loss to Vanderbilt, and he also got them their first opener loss in 24 years. Now, Florida State might be a good team this year. I'm sure they're a lot better than they were last year. They did bring in a lot of good transfer portal players, but this was unexcusable for Alabama. They looked terrible losing this game by 2 touchdowns. Ty Simpson didn't look very good at quarterback, but I didn't expect him to be that good because he had a chance to win the starting quarterback job 2 years ago when Nick Saban was still there, and he lost the quarterback competition to Jalen Milroe, who really, I think, held Alabama back in his time with them. But this wasn't all Ty Simpson's fault. I thought he would have a really good offensive line to lean on, but their offensive line was terrible in this game. They got pushed around. Now, I know they had one starter out, but that was still unexcusable performance by the Alabama offensive line. And Alabama's defense looked terrible too, especially with all the talent that they had coming back from what was a top 10 defense the year before. Alabama looks like they're an even worse team than they were last year. And when you see Kalen DeBoer on the sidelines, you never see him talking through his headset or getting after the players when things aren't going well, like Nick Saban would do all the time. I would be surprised if Kalen DeBoer is Alabama's head coach next season. Now, I have no idea if Nick Saban would be willing to come back or not, but Alabama should try, I think, to get him to come back because Kalen DeBoer has already run the program that Saban built up into the ground. So I watched some of the Clemson LSU game, and that was a very impressive win by LSU, 17 to 10, and it should have been 24 to 10 because LSU clearly got cheated out of a touch down. So if LSU, I picked them to win the national championship this year, and of course it's way too soon to say they're doing that, but I don't think it's too soon to say that LSU has actually got a really good team this year. Their defense looks to be elite this year, holding what is supposed to be an elite Clemson offense to really just 7 points offensively because the field goal Clemson got was because they got a turnover in field goal range and couldn't even move the ball 1 yard. So those transfers that LSU brought in on defense all seem to have worked out, especially on the defensive line. LSU's front seven looked elite. And those two linebackers they've got, Harold Perkins and Whit Weeks, I'd say are both top 10 players in college football. Harold Perkins, I'd say, is for sure going to be a first round draft pick next season. And Whit Weeks will probably be a first round draft pick because Clemson is still a loaded team, and I still think they're a really good team. I think they're probably going to win the ACC still. And Clemson's defense, I think, is a lot better too. So, Miami and Notre Dame, I watched pretty much every snap of that game yesterday, and Carson Beck looked really good. He looked like he did at Georgia the year before last, going against an elite Notre Dame secondary. He threw for 205 yards and two touchdowns, completing 20 of 31 throws and no interceptions. And Miami's offensive line, I said before the season began, is on paper probably the best in the country. And of course, it's way too soon to say that it's the best, but it sure looked like one of the best last night. It held up really well against what, on paper at least, is an elite Notre Dame front seven. They've sure got a lot of talent in there up front at seven. And Malachi Tony, it looks like he's probably going to be the next elite Miami wide receiver to replace Restrepo. He in his first ever college game last night had 6 catches for 82 yards and a touchdown. He was a four-star recruit, and he seems to have a whole lot of speed. And CJ Daniels, I thought, was the best of the transfer Miami wide receivers. He had last night 5 catches for 46 yards and a very impressive one-handed touchdown catch.
36 yards, 12 for 19 total. Under pressure, off his back foot, up for grabs.
But what was really the most impressive thing about Miami's 27-24 win last night was their defense. It looked so much better than it did a year ago. Looks like the new defensive coordinator and transfers that they brought in have worked out well because their defensive line actually won the battle against what, on paper at least, is an elite Notre Dame offensive line. They held Jeremiah Love to just 33 yards on 10 carries. Miami, I'd say, is at least going to be the second best team in the ACC this year. And I'd say after that win over Notre Dame, they're probably a real national title contender. I didn't think they were before this. I really thought Notre Dame was going to win this game. But Notre Dame, I'd say, is still a national title contender too, because this was a really close loss and it was on the road. If it had been at Notre Dame, there's a good chance that it would have been the other way around. So that will be it with this video. Please subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll be back soon.